Just 4 days after Alex Preddy was killed in Minneapolis on January 24th, Homeland Security investigations opened a case out of its St. Paul office. Not into the agents who killed Preddy, but into the people who protested Preddy's killing and the ICE presence in their city. They called it Operation Puppet Master. The operation's target was a network of alleged conspirators, people the government said were funneling help and money to, and I'm quoting the documents here, violent opportunists and agitators. And we only know about any of this because of a new court filing in a case involving 15 Minnesota protesters who were indicted in June. The government recently turned these records over to defense lawyers in that case during discovery. And then get this. On Thursday, one of those lawyers attached nearly 30 of those internal reports to a motion and filed them on the public docket for all of us to see. The motion asked the judge to order the government to hand over more files. So this is the government's own paperwork describing in the government's own words what the government did. And what it describes should give every American, anybody watching right now, serious pause. The reports detail Homeland Security officers sitting inside of churches and inside of schools and inside of public parks and public libraries, listening to Americans talk about how to protest. The trove of records also revealed that Homeland Security's investigative branch, they built a PowerPoint slide. They called this slide, look at it, The Conspiracy. And listed on it are 18 organizations that include a small bike repair collective in Minneapolis. The AFL-CIO is there, the largest federation of labor unions in the country, the Service Employees International Union, SEIU, a teachers union, the Democratic Socialists of America, a climate nonprofit as well. And just to be really clear, not a single one of those 18 organizations has been charged with a crime. They were not charged nor indicted in that June case. But that did not stop this administration from pulling years of their financial records. In one case, investigators went to the Federal Reserve for wire transfer data on the Communications Workers of America, CWA for short. Among the many workers CWA represents is the AP News Guild, the union for reporters at the Associated Press. They also pulled wires on SEIU under a heading, pay attention to this domestic terrorist financing. In response to the revelation, CWA's president, Claude Cummings Jr., released a statement. The statement said this: "Our union has become the latest target of a corrupt administration that weaponizes the legal process against law-abiding Americans exercising our constitutional rights. We will not be intimidated and we will not be silenced." And then there's the story of the federal agent who infiltrated one of those 18 groups. Remember, none of these organizations stand accused of anything at all. And all of this information is coming from government documents. ICE has already been inside a youth-led climate group, the Sunrise Movement, for a while. Undercover agents attended one of their trainings held at a church on December 13th. By December 22nd, an undercover agent had been added to the Sunrise Movement's signal group planning one of their hotel protests. On January 9th, 2 undercover agents stood in the crowd at a noise demonstration outside of a Hilton. All of this specific recon, was happening before Alex Preddy was killed, before Operation Puppet Master even existed. The documents identify one of these undercover agents as UCA 9833. UCA 9833. On the very last day of January, this undercover agent sat down in a meeting room at a public library in Minneapolis. He was there to watch the Sunrise Movement, and he took notes while they planned a protest. They talked about sit-ins and de-escalation methods. They discussed whether to have a police liaison and a safety marshal in the crowd, and then the agent went back and he wrote up his report. Here's his conclusion in his own words. During the action meeting, it was made clear that the Sunrise Movement organization focused on peaceful protests. Despite that finding on March 9th, weeks after the crackdown in Minneapolis had already wound down, The Intercept found that ICE sent a subpoena for the Federal Reserve Bank of New York to get the Sunrise Movement's wire transactions going back to 2023. That's nearly 2 years before Donald Trump was elected to a second term. That same day, the same reporting found that ICE subpoenaed a private wire transfer company for years of financial records belonging to Sunrise and several labor unions. Sunrise was never notified. They never got the chance to contest any of it. But that is not all. The undercover agent that day didn't just sit and listen. He actually interacted with attendees. According to the government's own report, he told one of them that he worked in construction and that he could build items that might help with more, quote, direct action protests. He let it be known that, quote, going to jail did not bother him. Let's zoom out for a second. Ask yourselves, why were these agents deployed against these groups in the first place? Consider what the report actually says. An agent who, on the one hand, wrote that the group was committed to peaceful protest and who, in that same meeting, appears to have been encouraging direct action. What does it look like to you? That's what it looks like to me. In a statement, Homeland Security told The Intercept that HSI investigates individuals and organizations and, quote, when it is just and legal cause to do so. Compare that statement against the agent's own report, the one that said that these were peaceful protests. Where's the cause to do so? Here's another uncomfortable truth. All these invasive and inappropriate methods described in the government's filings, which really just boil down to investigating the administration's critics, required almost nothing to prove. Those financial records obtained by administrative subpoena. No judge signed one, no probable cause is required. An agency simply issues it. How about the undercover work? Under existing guidelines, agents can attend a public meeting without any basis at all. Mike German is a former FBI agent who did undercover work. He put it pretty bluntly. He spoke to The Guardian. He noted that these were meetings that were open to the public. It is hardly a challenge to infiltrate this kind of meeting, and that should be a clue. This isn't a criminal group. Duh. The Foundation for Individual Rights and Expression is a free speech group funded in significant part by conservative and libertarian donors. It calls DHS's massive surveillance operation disturbing, too. The group's director of public advocacy told The Intercept this: criminal conduct by some members of a movement does not justify government surveillance and investigation of anyone who shares their broader political goals. You know what he warns? That it'll make Americans think twice before joining a protest, or attending a meeting, or donating, or maybe even speaking out at all. Being a member of an organization in America is not a crime. Association does not make you a conspirator. That is just basic constitutional law, and we have talked about it here almost weekly, and we will continue to talk about it as long as we need. And yet scores of people who were never charged with anything now have dossiers on them that contain license plates copied outside a church, audio recorded in a gym, agents inside Signal chats, and years of bank records belonging to groups accused of nothing. At one of those surveilled meetings in Richfield, Minnesota on December 7th, an organizer, Amelia Gonzalez Avalos, who's going to be speaking with me in just a minute, told the room that if there were any ICE officers present, they were welcome to stay because the training was constitutional and they had nothing to hide. Newly uncovered filings show that there indeed was an agent in that room. Here's what he wrote. There do not appear to be violations or threats to public safety. That was 7 weeks before Operation Puppet Master even existed. That did not stop the Trump regime from pressing forward against its critics in any way, shape, or form. Joining me now is Amelia Gonzalez Avalos, the executive director of Unidos Minnesota, which is one of the groups targeted by the Department of Homeland Security. I'm so grateful that you are here and you're sharing this story. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. Good morning.
That story is nuts out of that room in Richfield, that if there were ICE officers present, you said they were welcome to stay. What was it like to learn that there was actually an undercover agent there that day?
I felt sick and shocked, and it also felt clear because sick because someone sat in that room, shared food with us, watched us teach people their rights, and reported back. Clear because we did the work in open and purpose. I keep thinking about the trust in that room. People coming in scared, trying to figure out how to act together, how to legally use their constitutional rights to defend their country and democracy, to have disagreements and the right to petition to their government. And somebody used that against us, against them. And that's what I'm carrying today.
Has it changed how your group is operating? Are you or are your members afraid now?
I will say that there might be some fear in the air, but also a lot of clarity. We are the Minnesotans that prove that when we are in disagreement with the government, when they don't align with our values, we will go out and vote. We will go out and protest. We will go out and use our constitutional rights. And I'm seeing people doing more of that. Here is the bottom line. All of our taxpayer dollars are being used to spy on regular citizens because this government cannot fathom that regular people can actually organize and build something together to actually embody what free people being free is, to act as if we were living in a full democracy, in a high-functioning democracy. And Minnesotans just don't agree with that. They will be organizing regardless if there is fear. They will be calling other people. They will be inviting more people into sharing their values. And it is not even about political parties. Now it's about our democracy. What kind of vision we have for this country? What are the rights that we thought were guarantees and now are on the line for our children and our grandchildren?
That's the point to me that is so striking here, that you look back and you see how far the surveillance actually goes. What does that tell you about what this thing has been about, and whether or not it was actually about what was happening in that room on that day when you were training people about their constitutional rights?
Puppet Master and all of this surveillance, to me, feel like a confession. It says they cannot imagine ordinary people deciding together to act, so they went looking for a hand inside the glove. The largest or the deepest secret they were going to find in a Monarca training was that in Minnesota, we use pens. We use pencils in the winter because our pens will freeze. Wow. And they came in looking for a conspiracy. They found neighbors building chats, getting to know each other, aligning on how to do child drop-off and pickups, figuring out rides for work. And they wanted to call this a conspiracy. And we know that standing in sub-zero weather with a phone and a copy of the Constitution is what we were going to do, and we will continue to do.
I'm not surprised your pens were freezing. I had to buy a new pair of boots. My toes were so cold standing out there in Minneapolis during all of this. I have so many more questions for you. If you would, Amelia Gonzalez-Avalos, stay with me because I'd like to continue this conversation on the other side of the break. We'll be right back, everybody. I am back with Amelia Gonzalez-Avalos, the Executive Director of Unidos Minnesota, and we're continuing our conversation about how her organization and many others, progressive and unions and otherwise, were surveilled in what can be characterized as a mass spying campaign against these groups by federal agents in Minnesota. Let's start where we left off. As an organizer, how do you protect your members now from undercover agents potentially trying to entice them into acts of violence? Did you see that as entrapment? That agent coming in and saying that they'd be willing to get arrested during a training for a peaceful protest?
I mean, our discipline and our power is our protection. We know through history that this has happened before. Many of us have read through the 1950s and the MacArthurism and COINTELPRO. A lot of our traditions come from the civil rights movement, and we know that the surveillance and the criminalization was real. It is community organizing and fighting for equality are not easy tasks, but it requires all of us. And it requires discipline and rigor. Being nonviolent is a discipline. Being deeply relational and curious is part of our rigor. And so if you build a mass movement, you lead with trust, but also you lead with curiosity. We had people that wanted to meet with us and started asking us questions. Now we have some suspicion if they were actually HSI or ICE agents because they were very curious about linking us with this group, Direct Action Minnesota, that we have not heard of during those days. And we were like, we don't know them, but there's an ecosystem. Why would you be interested in that? And so the relational work and the organizing your neighbors is going to be your highest protection when you have a government with a lot of money, a lot of technology, surveillance infrastructure, and money and guns. And so what do we have? They had guns, we had whistles. They had massive technology for surveillance. We had signal chats. They had an agenda that wanted to pin us as criminals. We had the Constitution. And so as long as we're grounded on those values, as long as we are grounded on remaining peaceful, remaining relational, remaining curious, I think this continues to be an invitation to every single American that is concerned about the state of affairs and how their tax dollars are being used right now.
What is your response to the administration arguing that they only investigate when they have, what was it, a just and legal cause?
I think that they went looking for a conspiracy. My understanding, and I'm not a lawyer, is that usually you find probable cause and then you use legal recourse. You use subpoenas, you bring the Department of Justice, but they use our freedoms to send a fishing net to see what they could find first and then indict later. And I don't agree that that's the way that government should act. Yeah. I think that a lot of people have fought generation after generation for us to not have different rights regardless of your zip code, your race, or how much money you have in your bank account. Again, Unidos and Monarca are public. We are built under the infrastructure of 501c3 and 501c4 code systems. And a lot of our information is public. It is public because we must be held to some kind of accountability of transparency. That's the same accountability and transparency that this government should act on. The actions are questionable. The political retribution and the political persecution is real. They arrested 15 of our neighbors, trying to make them radicalized and different than any single person here in Minnesota, and they're not. So we are paying attention, and people should be alarmed. People, everyone, it does not matter if you're in Minnesota, if you're in Florida, if you're in Texas. I think there is one common agreement that we have with people that sometimes disagree with us on the issues, and is that the federal government, any government, should have guardrails when it comes to personal responsibilities and guarantees.
And that is not a progressive view. It's not a centrist view. It's not a Republican view. It's an American view. This has been a solution in search of a problem. And as you said, I had met so many amazing people who were out on the streets of not just Minneapolis, but all these other cities across the country, just out there because they wanted to push back against the encroachment by this administration. And I know that they will continue to be out there because they've been out there in the face of other encroachments, other criminalization of types of dissent. Amelia Gonzalez-Avalos, please come back, Executive Director for Unidos Minnesota, and keep us posted. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.